is the third week of July 1863. Union forces have landed on Morris Island and are about to attack Fort Wagner and maybe even Fort Johnson. In the areas around the Stono River, the Union has landed Chatfield's brigade, and the rebels have managed to establish solid positions upriver. Union ironclads are in the mouth of the lighthouse inlet, and they may be pressing towards Charleston Harbor, and they may test the defenses soon. The Union has 2 extra MSPs this turn, and that's important because even if they obtain the minimum number of SPs on the table, they will have 4 overall. And with 4 MSPs, they can activate 5 ironclads that could move into S6 and bombard Fort Wagner and the Confederate units there. And then the Union can activate in the same turn either Strong's or Vodge's brigade for an attack on Fort Wagner. Significant rebel forces are still in the Georgia and East Florida districts, and it will take them a while to reach the areas around Charleston that need to be defended. Now we roll to determine how many MSPs each side receives, and the Union already has 2. The Union rolled a 6. It will receive 5 additional MSPs. The Confederates rolled a 2. Only 2 MSPs. So this can be a long Union slanted turn with 7 MSPs and the Confederates 2. And the Confederates have the advantage, and they could use it right now to force a reroll either of their MSP die roll or the Union's. And the Confederates will use their advantage marker in order to have the Union re-roll their MSP die roll. So we pick up the blue die and we roll 1d6, and it's another 6. So the Confederate advantage is completely wasted. Now to allocate MSPs, and the Union begins. The Union places in command the 5 ironclads at S5, as well as Strong's brigade at L4, and Davis's brigade, which is currently in the island's off-map box. So that spends 3 MSPs. Now the Confederates decide to allocate MSPs to place any units in command. They only have 2 MSPs. And they will place Anderson's brigade in command, and Anderson is currently in the Georgia and East Florida district off-zone box. That uses up 1 MSP. Now we move on to the operations phase. On to the first impulse. The Union activates the ironclads at S5, and they move into S6. Now they can bombard Fort Wagner, which is adjacent at L5. Patapsco starts with a strength of 1 plus 4 supporting uncommitted ironclads. That's 5 plus 1 because the fort is adjacent, but a minus 1 because Fort Wagner is one of those forts that had well-sloped walls with extensive sand and log cushions. So it's plus 5. We roll 2d6. Snake eyes, and the modified result is a 7, not higher than double the defense value of Fort Wagner. So that's a no effect. Now the Passaic fires with 1 less die roll modifier point. So we roll 2d6. And this time the modified result is a 10, so Fort Wagner is reduced. Now the Montauk will try to take out Fort Wagner. We roll 2d6, and it does. Modified 10. Fort Wagner is destroyed. Now the two ironclads will fire at units that are entrenched at L5. The Nahant will fire at the entrenched cavalry that defends with a defense value of 4. We start with 1 for the Nahant and 1 for the uncommitted ironclad, that's 2. And we subtract 2 because of the strength of the entrenchment, so there's no modification. We roll 2d6, and the roll is a 12, so that reduces the Confederate unit. And finally, the Weehawken attacks with a strength of 1, minus 2 for the entrenchments. It's a final -1, and it will fire at the rebel cavalry, so we roll 2d6. The roll is an 11 modified to a 10, so the cavalry unit is destroyed. And that's the end of the first Union impulse. And the Union has 3 MSPs left. The Confederates activate Anderson's brigade. It has some cavalry and some infantry units. 6 cavalry and 2 infantry units, and they can move their regular movement allowance through zones and into areas. So we start with the infantry. The infantry will move to the connected 3rd and 4th district box, and from there into L23. Cavalry could move into L23 and move 1 more area, but stacking limitations prohibit it from entering L22, so the cavalry will have to also remain at L23, and that's the end of the Confederate impulse. They have no MSPs left and do not have the advantage. On to the second Union impulse. The Union activates Strong's brigade at L4, and it moves into L5 and announces an assault against the rebels that are entrenched there. Applicable modifiers for the Union: +12 on account of the 6 for the lead unit, which is the 54th Massachusetts, +3 supporting regiments, that's 9, +1 because they are all from the same formation, we're at 10, and +2 because there are adjacent monitors in S6 that have not been committed twice in the turn, and that modifier is a +2 maximum. On the Confederate side, the lead unit has 3 +2 because of the value of the entrenchments. So we roll 2d6 for each side. The roll is a 7 for the Union, modified to 19. For the Confederates, a 4 modified to 9. So the Union wins, and the Confederates have to absorb 10 casualty points, which they don't have. By eliminating the full-strength Confederate unit, they absorb 6. So L5, which is a victory or key area, falls in the hands of the Union and is now under Union control. That's the end of the Union's second impulse. The Confederates have no MSP, so they have to pass. Now we proceed to the third impulse. The Union activates Davis's brigade, currently in the islands off-map box, and it will move through amphibious movement, starting off at area S1, Stono Inlet, and from there into river area R1, continuing its movement into R6, and R6 is adjacent to 2 areas containing Confederate units in entrenchments. That's L11 and L12. So now the units of Davis have to disembark in a land area, and they can choose between L10, L9, L12, or L11, and they will disembark at L12, and they announce an assault. Diral modifiers are +10 for the Union, +3 for the Confederates. Final results for the Union: 19, for the Confederates 13. So the Union wins, and the Confederates have to eliminate 6 casualty points. 6 casualty points is exactly what they had there. So the Union occupies L12. That concludes the Union's third impulse. The Union has 2 MSPs left. Now we have to roll for possible sunset. We roll 2d6. The roll is a 7, so we move on to impulse 4. The Union will activate Davis's brigade once again, and notice that in the next turn, which is turn 3, there's a withdrawal scheduled for either Davis's or Strong's division, whichever has suffered the least amount of step reductions. For now, Davis has suffered none, so his brigade is probably earmarked to be withdrawn. So the Union will use the most of it, and it activates Davis to move into L11, and it announces an assault against the Confederates there. Total modifiers: 10 for the Union, 6 for the Confederates, so we roll 2d6 for each of the sides. The Union total is 17, the Confederate total is 11, so the Union wins again. Confederates have to sustain 6 casualty points, and they will flip both units to their reduced sides. That's the end of the 4th Union impulse. The Union has 1 MSP left, and the Confederates have to pass because they have none. So now we roll for possible sunset. The roll is a 6, so the game proceeds to impulse number 5. The Union has 1 MSP left, and Davis's brigade cannot be activated because it has been activated twice. Strong's brigade, however, has no possible targets because it would need first to move to L6 in order to then move on to L17. So it would need 2 MSPs and 2 activations, and the Union just doesn't have that. So the Union will simply pass and save that MSP for next week. Now we proceed to the end phase, and we remove all committed markers. Now to the random events table. We roll 2d6, and the roll is a 5. Slaves sent to Charleston. The Confederates need only 4 combat factors instead of 5 next turn for units to construct entrenchments. So the Union saved 1 MSP for next week. Now we move on, and at the beginning of this turn, Davis's brigade will have to withdraw because it has suffered less step losses than Strong's brigade. But all that happens in the next week, in the next episode of A Gate of Hell. This is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching.